The love of my life left me, wife of 5 years, for a wealthy man and a better life. Once I became a rich person, she wanted to come back in my life. Whole experience broke me. I still remember the day we met. It was fall, a brisk October day in our college courtyard. The air was cool and crisp, with leaves swirling in the breeze. I was 22, and she, Isabella, was 21. She looked like something out of a dream, with her dark, flowing hair cascading over her shoulders and her exotic beauty drawing everyone's eyes. The sunlight caught her flawless skin, and her smile radiated with a warmth I was immediately drawn to. I couldn't help but fall for her, hard. It was love at first sight, or at least that's how it felt to me. Isabella came from wealth. Her family lived in the sort of luxury I could only imagine in movies, with sprawling estates and lavish vacations. I wasn't from that world. I grew up in a modest, hardworking family. But none of that mattered to me. I thought love could bridge any gap, even one as vast as ours. She saw something in me, something more than just my lack of financial clout. Maybe it was the way I made her laugh, or perhaps she loved the simple way I saw the world, away from the pretenses and riches that had surrounded her all her life. Whatever it was, we fell for each other, hard. Love at first sight, or so I thought. We got married not long after finishing college. She stepped away from her life of luxury to build a life with me. I thought I could make her happy, that my love would be enough. But as the years passed, I began to notice something changing in her. It started subtly. Little comments about our home not being quite as big as what she was used to, or how she missed the designer clothes and weekend getaways with her old friends. I tried my best to provide for her, but no matter how hard I worked, I could never give her the life she had grown up in. At first, there were small disagreements about money, about the things we couldn't afford, but soon they escalated. She would look at me with those same beautiful eyes, now filled with disappointment. I could see how much it bothered her to watch her old friends live the life she once had, while we struggled to make ends meet. Her once radiant smile faded, replaced with a quiet discontent. She didn't say it outright, but I knew she regretted leaving her world of wealth behind. For the first few years, she tried to adjust, to live within our means, but it was clear, even then, that she wasn't comfortable. As the seasons passed, our relationship changed with them. Summers became stifling. Winters grew bitter. The tension between us slowly began to mount, until it became unbearable. Isabella started to feel trapped. She would look at me with disappointment. Her once glowing smile now faded. Her beauty was still mesmerizing, but her unhappiness was undeniable. She missed the life she had known, the luxury, the comfort, the wealth, and I wasn't able to replicate that for her. I was 28 when the arguments became serious. They were small at first, over things like bills and finances. But over time, they grew more heated, more frequent. I tried to reassure her, to tell her that things would get better, but no matter how hard I worked, I just couldn't give her what she wanted. She'd watch her old friends live their lives of opulence, engaged to men who could match the wealth she once knew, and she'd come home resentful. By the time our son Ethan was 4, Isabella had grown cold. We barely spoke without fighting, and I could feel the distance between us growing with each passing day. I hated it. I hated the feeling of losing her, of watching her slip away. But no matter what I did, I couldn't bring her back to me. One night, in the middle of a harsh winter storm, we were invited to a party at my boss's house. I was 30 by then, and Isabella was 29. She'd been restless for months, and I hoped this would cheer her up. When we arrived, the look on her face was like nothing I'd seen in years. Her eyes lit up as soon as we stepped into that world of wealth and opulence. She was back in her element. The lavish home, the expensive decor, the rich guests, it was everything she had missed. That night, she met Richard, my boss. He was older, in his mid-40s, divorced, and disgustingly rich. As soon as he saw my wife, Isabella, his gaze lingered a little too long, and she noticed. It didn't take long for her to bask in his attention. I tried to shake off the sick feeling in my stomach, but I couldn't ignore the way she lit up around him. It was a look I hadn't seen in years, a spark I thought was long gone. It killed me inside. As time went on, things between Isabella and Richard became obvious. I don't even know how things got started between them when they exchanged contact information, but all I know is that she was spending more time away, making excuses. I felt it. I knew it. The truth became too clear to deny. She was seeing him behind my back. And the worst part? I was powerless. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't compete. Every moment she was away, my heart broke a little more. The thought of her being intimate with another man, especially Richard, crushed my soul. I couldn't breathe knowing she was sharing herself with someone else. A few days later, the moment I always feared finally came. But it came much quicker than I thought. It was a rainy spring evening, cold and miserable. I had known it was coming, but it didn't soften the blow. She sat me down and told me she was leaving, that she couldn't live this life anymore. She said she still loved me, but she needed more. Richard could give her the life she craved. I silently stared at her face while she sat there saying all these things, looking at her lips and eyes. And when she stopped, I begged her to stay. I pleaded with her, tears streaming down my face, holding on to her like a child clinging to a parent. But she was already gone. When she walked out that door, I fell to the floor sobbing like a baby. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the love of my life, the mother of my child, had left me for another man. The emptiness that followed was unbearable. I was 31, a broken man. I felt nothing but cold in her absence. My heart, my soul, they froze over. I could barely function. Every day was a blur, and I found myself going through the motions, trying to hold it together for Ethan. Days passed in pretty much the same manner for months. It was a late autumn afternoon when I saw them. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that hinted at the impending rain. I was heading home from after walking through the park to clear my head. The cold October wind bit at my face, leaves scattering at my feet. That's when I saw them, Isabella and Richard. They were sitting on a bench, tucked away in a quiet corner, oblivious to the world around them. I stopped in my tracks. My heart dropped to my stomach as I watched them. She was laughing at something he said, the sound of her voice cutting through the silence. And then he leaned in and kissed her. She didn't hesitate, didn't pull away. Instead, she melted into him, like she had once melted into me. They looked so comfortable, so intimate. I felt a surge of nausea rise in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run over and rip her away from him, but I couldn't. My legs felt like they were made of lead, rooted to the ground. I stood there paralyzed, watching the love of my life in the arms of another man. The pain was unbearable, like a knife twisting deeper with every second. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stand there and watch my world crumble. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every image of Isabella and Richard burned into my mind. The following nights were worse. I started having nightmares. In the dreams, I could see them together, but it wasn't just a kiss this time. No, it was worse. I saw them in bed, their bodies intertwined, her soft skin against his. I could hear her laughter, her moans. I watched helplessly as she touched him the way she used to touch me, as he explored her the way I once had. It was torture. Pure, unrelenting torture. The worst part was her eyes. In my dreams, when she looked at him, it was with the same passion she once had for me. Those deep, enchanting eyes that had once held so much love for me were now filled with desire for another man. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, my body trembling. I would lie there, unable to shake the images, haunted by the thought of her being intimate with him. It wasn't just a dream. It was my worst fear come to life, replaying in my head every night. Days turned into weeks, and I sank deeper into a pit of despair. I had lost her. She was gone. and there was nothing I could do to bring her back. Then, one night, something unexpected happened. It was a cold December evening. The wind howled outside, and I was sitting alone in our small living room, staring blankly at the black TV screen. My son was with his grandparents. My mind was somewhere else, as it often was these days, on Isabella, on Richard, on everything I had lost. Suddenly, I remembered the stack of lottery tickets Isabella had bought weeks before she left. She had this idea that maybe, just maybe, we could win something big. She would joke about it, saying, "Who knows? We could win the lottery and all our problems would disappear." I never believed in that kind of luck, but she had convinced me to play along. With nothing else to do, I grabbed the tickets from the drawer and started checking the numbers, not expecting much. The first few tickets were duds as usual, but then I saw it. The numbers matched. All of them. My hands began to shake as I double-checked, triple-checked. It was real. I had won. I dropped the tickets, and the weight of it hit me all at once. I fell to my knees and sobbed. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. It wasn't just the shock of the win. It was everything. All the pain, all the heartache, all the sleepless nights, all the dreams of Isabella with Richard. It all came flooding out. I wept for the love I had lost, for the man I used to be, for the life I thought we could have had. I cashed out the lottery winnings in my account in the next few days. The idea of being this rich was still pretty much unreal and felt like a dream. When I wasn't thinking about Isabella, I was checking my phone again and again to see that those millions were actually in my account. A few days passed by, and out of nowhere, Isabella came back into my life. She had heard about the money, of course. I later came to know that it was my mother who called her and told her about this money. She wanted to rub this money into her face, kind of her way of saying, "Look, you left my son for money, and now he's rich too. It was you that bad luck all along." Anyways, she came to my door one evening, standing there in the rain, drenched, but still as beautiful as ever. She looked at me with those same enchanting eyes, pleading. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "Richard, he wasn't who I thought he was. He used me, but I never stopped loving you. Please, please, let's try again. We can fix this." It was all very unexpected. I wasn't expecting to see her at all. Her words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she still loved me, that we could fix everything, that the nightmare I had lived through was just a horrible mistake. But then, the memories of her with Richard came flooding back. The image of them kissing, the nightmares of them in bed together. It was all too much. I couldn't do it. She begged me, using every tactic she could think of. She reminded me of our son, of the life we had built together. She even tried to use her beauty, the very thing that had once captivated me, to win me back. But it was no use. The love I had for her had turned cold. I couldn't look at her without seeing Richard, without seeing her betrayal. "I can't," I told her, my voice flat, emotionless. "I loved you once, more than anything. But you left. You broke me. And now it's too late." She cried, begged, pleaded, but it didn't matter. The part of me that had once longed for her was gone. All that remained was the memory of what we used to be. When I stood there, looking into Isabella's pleading eyes, I felt an agonizing pull deep within me, a mix of love, pain, and anger swirling inside like a storm. She was still as beautiful as ever, and for a fleeting moment all the memories of the life we had, the love we shared, came rushing back. I could still feel the way I used to adore her, how she had once been my everything. But beneath that love was something stronger, rage. The anger burned hot, overwhelming the tenderness I once felt. How could she stand there now, asking for forgiveness, after tearing my heart apart? After shattering me with her betrayal, after all those nights I spent alone, haunted by the thought of her in another man's arms. The love I still had for her was drowned out by the bitterness that had taken its place. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it was all a nightmare that we could wake from, but the fury wouldn't let me. When I told her no, the look on her face broke something inside me, but I couldn't stop myself. She stumbled back a step, her eyes wide with disbelief, as though she couldn't fathom that I wouldn't take her back. The rain had started to fall harder, but neither of us moved. It was as if time itself had frozen. She hesitated, searching my face one last time for a glimmer of hope, but there was none. And then, with a defeated sigh, she turned away, her shoulders slumped, as if the weight of her own choices had finally caught up with her. I watched her walk down the steps, into the rain, the droplets mixing with her tears, and the sound of her fading footsteps echoed in my chest like the final heartbeat of something long dead. When she left, I sat on my couch with a tremendous heartache, but not a single drop of tear fell from my eyes. I sat there for hours before passing out right there on the couch. That night, I had a very weird dream. We were young again, me and Isabella. I saw her sitting alone somewhere facing the garden. I walked up to her with all the love in my heart. I walked up to her and placed my hand on her shoulder. But when she turned around, it was someone else. "Can I help you?" that unknown person asked. I couldn't believe how could I mistake my Isabella for someone else. "I'm sorry, I thought you were my wife," I said. "Funny thing is, we weren't even married yet. I hadn't even proposed to her till the final year of our college." Instead of saying, "It's okay," she looked me in my eyes and with a pleasant smile she said, "Everything will be fine," and walked away. A few days passed and I started thinking about getting on my feet again. I agreed to share custody of Ethan. For his sake, I wanted to keep things civil, but as for Isabella and me, I refused to see her again. That was over. I threw myself into building the life I had dreamed of before everything fell apart. I used my newfound wealth to start the restaurant I had always wanted to open, something I had talked about with Isabella for years. It was a way of reclaiming a piece of my old self, of finding purpose again. But even in my success, I couldn't fully escape her. I named the restaurant Isabella's Dining. It was a way of honoring what we had once shared, but also a reminder of what I had survived. Every time I saw that sign, I felt a strange mix of pride and pain. It was poetic in a way, her name etched into something I had built without her, a lasting tribute to a love that had once been everything, but was now nothing more than a distant memory. Naming the restaurant after Isabella wasn't just a whim or an act of lingering love. It was something far more complex, layered with both meaning and bitterness. In a way, it was my final nod to the woman who had once been my entire world. Despite all the pain she caused, Isabella had been the catalyst for everything. My drive to work harder, to succeed, to become the man she had always wished I was. By naming the restaurant Isabella's Dining, it wasn't just a tribute to our past. It was a reminder to myself of everything I had survived. It stood as a paradox, both an homage to the love we once shared and a scar that would never fade. Every time I saw her name above that door, I was reminded that while she had once inspired my dreams, she had also been the one to crush them. It was my way of reclaiming control, of transforming the agony she left behind into something meaningful, something that was mine, without her. Isabella's Dining wasn't just a name. It was the embodiment of both love and loss, forever etched into the success I built from the ashes of our broken life.